Welcome to the episode of Locked In. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about my full review of the RideFarr Aero Carbon Bolt-On Bar. Is this the next greatest thing for your gravel bike? If this is something you're interested in, please stay tuned. In this video, I'm going to be going over the specs, the installation process, price, and my final thoughts. So let's get into the specs. If you've seen my unboxing video and first impressions already, you can skip past this section. But if you haven't, this is a Aero Carbon Bolt-On Bar. It is a full carbon construction. It weighs a total of 98 grams, including the hardware of how you attach it to your bike. It is a 31.8 clamp diameter setup, and it does feature a rounded mount for the front so you can attach your GPS or LED light to it. And they do have optional little inserts here to add a little bit more tactileness to the bar. And it does come in multiple colors depending on when you're watching this. Now let's get into installation. Installing this is pretty straightforward, but one thing you'll need to keep in mind, if you do have a front mount computer or a bell like I do on my bike, you do have to remove pretty much everything on your handlebars and relocate it and find new mounting solutions so that you can fit this on there. So installation is pretty straightforward. You're gonna put a little bit of grease into the thread holes on the carbon piece. Then you're going to flip it kind of almost upside down so it can kind of rest on the stem. Then take your bolts and slowly thread them in. I always recommend to do them by hand first. They do come with Loctite on there, so you're gonna initially get a first few threads really easy, then it's gonna firm up. Then you're gonna take this as little as 2 to 3 Newton meters. Now most torque tools you're gonna have are gonna be set at 5, but you can get a torque tool in this spec. Essentially this is gonna be slightly over finger tight, but I would recommend taking this to a shop or picking up one of those tools to make sure it doesn't slip on you. Now for extra assurance, you could, in my opinion, because you don't obviously want this slipping on you on the trail, and I never had any slippage when riding it myself, and I kind of did it by feel, to be honest. Now, there is one last step to installation. Is pretty much just what I'm gonna call finessing it, is finding the right angle that you like the bar set at. Now, I leveled it basically with my hoods, but you're gonna wanna play around with that. If you have a trainer or somewhere where you can kind of lean the bike up or sit on the bike so you can basically sit in that seated position to kind of fine tune that angle and then tighten it there, that's your best way to do it. Or just bring your tool with you, go out on a ride and just slowly adjust it for that first ride. Now let's get into price. This system retails for $155 currently on RideFarr's website. And they are an internationally based company, so check what shipping might be in your area since it may vary. Now let's get on to my final thoughts. I'm gonna break this up into a couple of sections. First, let's go over the mounting that I mentioned before that you have to kind of relocate. So, like I mentioned in my unboxing video, this isn't actually a fully round section here, so you're gonna have to use, when you're mounting your LED light, a strap style system like I did in my unboxing. Or if you're gonna be mounting your GPS up here instead of on your stem or anywhere else on your bike, you're gonna need to get the standard OEM mount if you have it still, and use basically your O-rings to attach it to the front of the bar. So that is a little bit of a change up for me, at least, since I run a light with a GoPro mount typically. Can't do that with this, with a standard clamp-on mount. So you are gonna need to potentially move around your clamping systems, and obviously that's gonna change or add something that you may need to buy. As far as using it in that regard, it does work well, and I do actually like the light out farther forward when attaching a frame bag, because it does give my light more space between the bags, so it's easier to use with a light attached. So there is one pro to having the light out farther forward than it is on my K-edge mount. Now let's get into adjustment. It took me about 30 minutes or so on the river trail by me to kind of fine tune that angle that I liked, because I didn't want to go through the hassle, honestly, to set it up on the trainer. But after that, it was pretty easy. Now, the main concern I had, like I mentioned in my previous video, was my hands getting sweaty and slipping on the top of the Aero bar. Now, when I ride on this, I tend to actually push my shoulders back to grab on the section that is meant for your palms, which I have to say is beautifully shaped. The ergonomics of that section are, I'd have to say, perfect. That being said, because it's not as long as a standard TT bar, it does put your elbows pretty far back, and you are resting a lot of your body weight on the unit itself. Now, on the flats on road, this was fine, but I did notice that my elbows were closer to my knees, and I did kind of ride with my elbows out a little bit, so I didn't have the possibility of impacting my knees into my elbow, because you are much more forward and lower down. Now, that never did happen. Then on gravel, kind of the same thing. Gravel riding on this in a full rigid setup, which is how I tested it, because essentially I figured if you're riding this on a mountain bike or a gravel bike with a suspension stem or a road bike, so riding this on gravel and road were very different experiences. On road, typically if I'm doing a long flat ride and I want to basically get more aero or add a fourth position for me to sit in, I'll put my forearms on my handlebars and kind of hang my hands out forward. Now, this doesn't always work depending on how sweaty I am because it can actually slip forward. So this is basically a potentially safer option for me when wanting to tuck down like that. Now for me, if you see the footage, you can see how far forward my hands are compared to where the mount is. So I usually do like running my hands farther out. So when grabbing this, it did pull my hands a little bit farther back, tucking my elbows in, which obviously is going to make you more aerodynamic. Now, I really initially wanted this thing to be a little bit longer, and you can see my different hand position I'm kind of going for. This is ideally where I'd like my hands to be at. Now, keep in mind, I have been professionally bike fitted, and this is the correct stem length for me. So to make the hand position for the aero bar work, I'd have to go one stem longer, but then my hood position wouldn't work as well. So there is a little bit of compromise based on how simple and small this system is. So keep that in mind. It's not going to be as ideal as a full TT setup. Next, let's get into who I think this is perfect for. I think this is going to be for the rider who's looking for a fourth position. Your mountain bike racer or endurance racer, road, or even gravel. The reason being is you essentially have three main positions on your drop bar bike. Your drops, your hoods, and the flats or the tops of your bars. For mountain, you only have your one position. So for mountain bikes, I really see this as an advantage for those long, flat straights, either on road or off. I think this is going to be killer for them, and RideFarr does actually sell a carbon bar with this integrated into it. For road, I obviously, again, would see a big benefit on the flats for someone who wants a light, compact setup that they can easily remove for their road rides since they're not doing a ton of TT-style bike riding. For gravel, I would definitely recommend this with a suspension stem like the Redshift Shock Stop, but I rode it rigid because I wanted to see for someone who doesn't have that, because that stem is a little bit pricey and that would make the overall system much more expensive. So I wanted to ride it in essentially the most rigid or worst case scenario. And on gravel, it was actually pretty good on the flats. I didn't ride anything obviously super chunky or crazy because I didn't want obviously my hands falling off or anything like that, but even on some undulations, I was able to hold on to it. Obviously, I was gripping it a lot tighter on the gravel sections to where I don't think I would be able to sustain that with a rigid stem that long. With the shock stop stem, it probably increased my total time, I'd say about 20% because of the fatigue factor, but I don't see using this on really long gravel straights, even if it's basically dead smooth, just because of that factor. So how would I remedy that? If it was me and I was working for RideFarr, I would make an XL version, making it a little bit longer. As you can see in the footage, I liked actually grabbing farther up, so either making a double palm position or just a longer piece so that the palm position was about 10 to 20 mils higher up. I think that would kind of put it in this ideal scenario. Now that does throw your computer and light really far out, and I get the convenience of how small and compact this is, but that would be my ideal riding position for me, but this may not be the problem for you. I think it is a great solution for that, and the benefit to this system, because of how small and compact it is, you can essentially use this on every single bike that you own and get that more aero position no matter what you're riding. So I hope you like this video. If you have any questions about this bar, please put that in the comments below. If you haven't subscribed already, please do, and give this video a like. It really does help with the channel. I'm trying to make this YouTube thing a full-time gig. And if you want to support the channel and help me make more videos every single week, I do have a link to my Patreon in the links below with different perks at different tier levels to offer for you guys. And if you want to follow me on Instagram and Facebook, links are down there as well. And thanks for watching another episode of Locked In.